Welcome to Darkwood.
Hey, before this video begins, be sure to subscribe. It's free and you can always unsubscribe if you don't like my content. I put a lot of effort into this video and I'm probably going to do this kind of stuff again with other games real soon, so stay tuned. Also, be sure to leave a comment so I know you were here. And yeah, enjoy the video.
I suppose you won't tell me what you want, and you want something since you're standing here in front of me, right? Eat the old lady.
Darkwood is a survival horror game, almost uncomparable to anything I've ever played. I'm fairly knowledgeable when it comes to horror. I love horror, and I am damn proud to admit that this game is one of my favorites. It's one of the few games that have managed to genuinely scare me in a way that others just couldn't. For example, I want to bring out two more games. These are The Forest and Amnesia. You see, the thing that these three games have in common is, well, a couple things actually. However, the most important one is the lack of jump scares. None of these games use jump scares in order to scare the player. Instead, they use a combination of sound design, enemy design, and overall ambiance to make you uneasy. Or in some cases, make you want to run for your fucking life. A movie example I can bring is a classic, The Shining. Instead of Jack popping out and screaming in your face to scare you, it uses constant paranoia and drawn out tense scenes. See, the difference between a jump scare and actually scary scenes is, well, jump scares aren't scary. They're startling and they may get your heart pumping for a couple seconds, but that's about it. But just what exactly makes Darkwood so good? Well, it's a lot of things. The lack of jump scares doesn't necessarily make the game scarier. No, Darkwood has a great deal of different strong suits, but its greatest strength is sound design. Darkwood manages to really shine in the audio compartment. It features not only really good, somewhat calming, somewhat terrifying soundtracks, but just a great sound design in general. It doesn't matter what game you're playing, audio is important and will help you get immersed into whatever world you're in. And Darkwood does not disappoint. I remember the first time I had to play through the village well level and I almost couldn't. It is incredibly good and it wouldn't be the same without it. It is terrifying to be in your base, minding your own business, and all of a sudden hearing a second pair of footsteps like yours. Or sitting in a corner waiting for the godforsaken night to end and listening in as someone is running around in the room next to you, frantically looking for you. Of course, this isn't the first time good sound design like this has been used in horror games, but it doesn't take away from the fact that Darkwood has incredible audio and it really adds a lot. Gameplay-wise, Darkwood is a survival horror game, and no, I'm not talking about the walking simulator that is Outlast. This isn't survival horror, it's a walking simulator. While on video, it may not appear to be the scariest game, I can assure you it's a whole new experience actually playing it for yourself, in the dark, alone. The game is in top-down view, however you have a corner vision. This means you cannot see anything that is behind you. Things like houses and trees will still be visible, however, as they don't move, as far as you know. Anything that moves, including creatures and certain types of objects, will not be visible when they're behind you. This means if you want to run away from something, you're gonna have to turn your back and lose sight of it. This cone of vision means that sound becomes extremely important, as you can still hear things even if they're behind you. And like I said before, sound design is Darkwood's greatest strength. You play as the stranger, a guy with a horribly fucked up face who doesn't need to eat, sleep, or piss. Now you may be asking, well, if you don't need to eat or sleep, then what's the survival part? Well, you can still die, and you have a health bar. At night, the game completely changes. You need to barricade your hideout and make sure you have enough fuel in the generator for the night. According to the wiki, one in-game day is roughly 10 minutes, and the night is only 5. But that 5 minutes can feel like an eternity, as you have to stay inside your hideout and survive as best you can. You are not allowed outside, and doing so will be practically automatic suicide. I mean, it's like typing kill in console in a Source game. It's instant death, okay? There's no escape from it. Enemies will come for you, they will try to get in, and they will succeed. You just have to be ready. You can't hide in just any building either. There's 4 specific hideout locations through Darkwood where you can stay. These houses have generators and the almighty oven. This is what keeps you safe. It's also where you can give yourself different abilities by injecting yourself with any organic material you can find throughout the land of Darkwood. Because that's smart. This means mushrooms, meat, and so on. Injecting yourself can also trigger different dream sequences. Keep in mind that choosing a good trait or ability will also mean you have to choose one bad trait. This means the stronger you get, the more shit you're gonna have to deal with, so the game will not be a cakewalk by any means after a certain amount of injections. Going back to hideouts in general, what's cool is enemies that roam around your base won't actually know if you're even there. Contrary to popular belief, they don't seem to really care about lights, but don't worry, even I learned this only while editing this video. They do, however, react to sound. Enemies like savages, for example, will occasionally start breaking down barricades, but if they don't hear a reaction, such as you walking around frantically, they usually just give up, or walk off after breaking the barricade. They can see you through the cracks of walls and barricaded windows though, so blocking those with wardrobes or just staying away from them is a good idea. Keep in mind, not all wardrobes block your vision, there's some that are only like waist high, so keep that in mind. Once you've survived the night, say hello to the best video game character in any game ever. The Trader. See this man? I love this man. He only comes by briefly in the morning and he can sell you stuff. But man, after a stressful last night, it is so nice to see him sometimes. Not to mention how nice he is. I mean, he literally feels relief when he sees that you've survived your first night. He even gives you a CAS scan. I love this guy, dude. Every night you survive, you gain reputation with him, which I forgot to mention, but dying at nighttime in this game means you will wake up at 8 AM, unless you're on permadeath, but you won't gain any reputation. You can also sell stuff to him, which will also give you reputation. This is basically your currency and will allow you to buy his goods. You can do this with a couple different characters in the game, but the only ones who appear in your base are the Trader in Chapter 1 and the 3 in Chapter 2. So now we know what the nighttime is like. So, what do you do in the day? Well, you know your objective, obtain the key that the doctor man had stolen off you on the start of the game. If you don't know what to do, by the way, there's an in-game journal where the stranger marks down everything you need to know. Also, in order to survive the night, you're gonna have to scavenge for supplies. This means weapons, ammo, materials to barricade windows and doors and etc. Most of the enemies you meet, I recommend killing them with melee, as ammo is fairly rare. But you know what's rare? The chance that you're subscribed. Talking about the map for a second, the first chapter splits up into 3 parts. The dry meadow, which is where you start, the silent forest, and then the old woods. Each section will feature new enemies and tougher environments. Chapter 2 takes place in the swamp. The map changes throughout every playthrough, so there's not any maps you can necessarily just Google to see where everything is. You're gonna have to find stuff yourself. What's cool about the map in Darkwood is you won't know where you actually are unless you're next to a landmark. There's no cursor showing your exact position like you're using fucking Google Maps or something, so you're gonna have to use the map like a normal person. There's a ton of different landmarks and locations throughout Darkwood. They're all different, some are just abandoned houses with maybe some loot and a couple enemies. But some also have their own little stories that you can discover as you explore. For example, the wedding, which in my opinion is one of the coolest locations. One visual thing that I wanted to mention was the trees. It's a small detail, but I still really enjoy it. Since the game isn't top-down view, you can only clearly see the stumps. But when you get near them, they obviously block your line of sight, but the quote-unquote shadows of the trees can also be seen as the trees themselves going upward, if that makes any sense. It's most noticeable in the epilogue when you're walking through the dense forest. It's such a small thing, and most of you probably don't care, but I just really love it, and I can't explain why. There's many different types of enemies. I'm gonna briefly cover them all, but I'm not gonna go too in depth. The first enemy you meet is the dog. It's a dog. Then you have the savages, which are just naked people with sticks or sometimes rocks, driven to insanity by the woods. The chompers, which are naked people, but they're extremely tough, and also they're like split open. I mean, they look like something from The Thing, seriously. The Banshee, who screams at you really loudly as if you just turned off their PC in the middle of their super good Minecraft speedrun. I would put an image of someone's actual asshole here, but YouTube doesn't allow that. The Mushroom Man, who explodes if you get too near. He gives chase as soon as you trigger him and will explode after a while, so if you don't have to, don't fight him, just run. And then you have Floor Gore, which is the thing that basically chases you and insta-kills you if you're outside of your hideout at nighttime. In Chapter 2, you have all the same enemies from Chapter 1, but with a few extra additions. For example, you can expect to encounter the human spider, which can throw his limbs at you and spawn more spiders if left unkilled. They're fairly weak, but terrifying. Spider-Man, Spider-Man, does whatever a spider does. There's also the centipede, which can go underground and pop up anywhere. This means he can appear inside your base, so be careful. Just like the spider, it's really weak though, so just a single shot from a hunting rifle or a shotgun will kill it. Centipede, more like I centipede. Last but not least, there's the Swamper. It's a giant lizard living in the water. These guys don't attack your hideout at night, but they're still fairly common throughout the swamp. And that's pretty much it. So now that we've gone over all the enemies, let's talk about the combat. The combat is, well, it can be quite challenging, especially if you haven't been around top-down games a lot, specifically top-down games with melee combat, but, you know. On my first playthrough, the savages weren't too bad and the dogs are fairly easy to dodge, but it was the chompers I really had trouble with. And even now, after taking a break and coming back, I'm still kinda having trouble with them. It certainly has a tiny learning curve, but you'll get the hang of it. Take your time to learn the movements of different enemies. Usually the savages and villagers are the easier ones to learn. You just take a step back and see, wow, 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 and then next time you know, like, okay, so after that I can, bonk them. The dogs you can sidestep and then hit, but you can also just time your attack so you can hit them right in the faces when they're charging you. The chompers charge you as well, but with these guys you're gonna have to learn to sidestep, as trying to hit them while they're running straight at you will either result in you getting fucking bodied or getting absolutely clowned on, one of those two. The spiders, just fucking shoot them. The centipedes you can kinda just play whack-a-mole with them or shoot them if they're about to charge you, so... I usually use the knives you can find throughout Chapter 2, as they can insta-kill both spiders and centipedes if you throw it, so... When it comes to melee, the choice between the axe and the shovel ultimately comes down to you. The axe is faster and deals more damage, but it has much shorter range. I personally don't like the shovel and will only use it if I have to, because it's just so slow. But in the end, this is up to you, since I know there's people who prefer the shovel over the axe. Even though I will never understand you. Darkwood's story is something to admire. When you take the actual objective, it becomes quite simple. Find the key and get out. But the overall vibe and the characters and the locations are what really make this game's story special. No one has an actual name. I mean, there's people like Janek, who you can hear about in dialogue and etc. But no one you meet in the game actually has a name. You are of course the stranger. Then there's the wolf, the musician, the chicken lady, the pretty lady, the mushroom granny, the trader, the doctor, the sow, the elephants, and my personal favorite, the snail. The fucking snail. Hold up, did this motherfucker just call me ugly? Really? And that's not all, of course. There's a lot of different characters in this game, but they all follow the same format. We don't ever learn anyone's actual name. Except Piotrek, but I kind of forgot about him when I was writing the original script, so I'm adding him in now as a side note, but yeah, I guess that's technically a name, I think. Like I said before, Chapter 1's main objective is to find the doctor. Chapter 2 requires you to find your way out of the swamp, of which there are 2 ways to do so. The actual backstory for Darkwood is a whole nother beast that I would rather not tackle in this video. There's a whole bunch of clues and bits of lore scattered around the game that you can find that will gradually explain the story just a little bit more. There's also a fairly lengthy guide on Steam explaining absolutely everything, so if you really want to know, I'll leave a link in the description where you can read about the lore and why everything is the way it is in Darkwood. Trust me, it's really interesting and I highly recommend reading it. but, you know, play the game first. Everyone has their own little backstory. Even characters who you can't personally speak to will sometimes converse with each other and reveal some sort of backstory for who they are or what they're currently experiencing or have experienced. I liked pretty much all the characters, but an honorable mention is definitely the elephants. They have a cool storyline, and I just like their characters in general. Another one is the wolf man, who rocks a Kalashnikov on his back and calls you meat all the time. He was shunned by the villagers and has to therefore live on his own, with constant anger and rage ruling him. Even with that, however, he's actually quite respectable. He will help you as best as he can and will actually be pretty nice to you as long as you help him and follow his storyline instead of the musicians. He calls you comrade and he definitely proves that he can be loyal. If you don't help him or go against him though, he will hold a massive grudge, going so far as to follow you to the swamp to make you fight him in an intentionally difficult fight. My favorite is definitely the musician though. Mostly just because every time I play this game I get fucking heartbroken because I feel so bad for him. The musician is just a boy with a violin who has a crush on Pretty Lady and is one of two, or I guess technically three, options of finding the doctor. He can be found in the village upon first interacting with Chicken Lady. For some reason, everyone hates his violin skills, but I think it's beautiful. His story is overall one of the saddest in the game, with the possibility of getting him killed by his own parents or making him depressed because you killed his parents. Depending on your choices in Chapter 1, he can also make an appearance in Chapter 2, and oh my fucking god, it is the saddest thing I've ever seen. I want to give him a hug. Please, game, let me hug this poor mutated boy. I wouldn't call anyone in this game a good person, not even the main character. Everyone has their own shit they're not proud of, but it makes sense. Darkwood is an unforgiving place, and you need to learn to make sacrifices if you want to make it here. Not to mention the plague rotting everyone's brains and turning them into more aggressive versions of themselves. The living conditions of these people are brutal, and you will realize this fairly fast after entering this hellish landscape. Not to mention the absolute horrifying experience that is the swamp in general. I fucking love Darkwood. I've played through the game quite a few times now, and it still manages to scare me. The ambiance, the gameplay, the audio, the story in general of what Darkwood even is, it's terrifying. It's a terrifying scenario, and every time I play, I can't help but get super immersed. And while yes, not everyone is going to enjoy this as much as I do, I still recommend at least giving it a chance. It's $14 on the Steam store, and it is so worth it. Darkwood has so much to offer, and even I haven't explored 100% everything yet. It took me a long time to actually finish the game on my first run. I believe it was around 25 or 30 hours, but that's mostly because I just took it super slow. And I was kind of scared, so... Show anyone still watching? If you made it to the end of the video, I just want to say thank you. I really hope you enjoyed, and I hope that if you were watching this video to maybe see if the game was worth a buy or not, I hope I helped in making up your mind. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.